So I just want to jump straight into this, starting from S tier, making our way down the list to F tier. And no, before you start commenting, where's the Mark 10? I'm not including event items or anything as such, just the weapons in the main game. Without any further ado, let's jump into it. So I've placed the musket in S tier for a large amount of reasons. Being able to switch from a really good flintlock to meleeing without having to switch to your secondary is amazing in itself. But removing the bayonet and you still have 10 shots that can deal a lot of damage, dealing an astonishing 120 damage per shot with a pretty decent reload speed of 10 seconds. You're not carrying a musket, you're carrying a machine. Now this isn't the only benefit the musket has, because having an officer charge the player or brace the player will force them to have an insta-kill weapon for either 8 seconds or 20 seconds. Meaning the stats live up to its name, but why stop there when you can add an insta-kill to it also? Having a short reload speed of 7.7 with a 95 damage a pellet, the carbine is just the musket's smaller and equally as good baby brother. Dealing less damage and less reload speed, why is the weapon even considered an S tier weapon? Well, sure, it's weaker, but faster reload doesn't live up to much, but the shove ability does. By pressing the X key on keyboard, you can shove multiple enemies at once for roughly 3 seconds. And sure, this doesn't sound like much, but if you can master the shove, reload and swing ability, you truly are unstoppable. Also, to even add to this beast, it only comes at a cheap 300 francs, meaning even the newest and new gens could buy this handy piece of kit. And of course, we couldn't go further than by adding the horse artillery pistol. This absolutely goated double-barreled styled carbine packs a punch, with one barrel being slightly less accurate than the other and costing a whopping 700 francs. Why bother playing a few games just to unlock this weapon? Well, sure, it doesn't have the ability to shove like the carbine or bayonet like the musket, but instead it has another barrel. This makes the gun unique in almost every way. Having the option to reload both barrels and fire both barrels, it adapts to the environment no matter the situation. Whether it's targeting important targets such as Copenhagen's barrel section or taking out a large horde with ease, the horse artillery pistol is perfect for any situation. Now sure, it has an 85 damage a pellet, basically 170 damage for the entirety of the gun, and it can penetrate up to 5 enemies with the cost of a slow reload. However, introducing the reload cancelling, which basically turns your gun into a doom shotgun. Moving over to the Seaman class, we have the Navy pistol, a short range stunning cannon, giving a slight kickback per shot, pressing X to stun a singular zombie, and having a short reload. This weapon is perfect in every way. It can wipe out a horde of shamblers with ease, and granted it costs 600 franc, and that can put a few people off wanting the weapon, but it lives up to its name. In short, it's a smaller, better blunderbuss, being able to deal 35 damage a pellet, basically 350 damage because it shoots 10 pellets at 35 times 10 is 350, and only having an 8-second reload time. There's not an occasion where this weapon isn't best suited for it. Without a doubt, I think everyone will agree the double barrel pistol is insane. A 2-barreled, fast reloading, agile, precise and damage based Calibri is astonishing. Granted, the only downside to this weapon is the price tag, costing 1300 franc. Is it really worth it? 100%. Not purchasing this weapon and not trying it would mean a priest would need to cleanse you of your sins. It's an improvement from the pistol, more on that later, and the stats of the weapon says everything about it. The 2 barrels, much like the horse artillery pistol, allows you to switch between single fire or double fire. Either way, there isn't a downside to this weapon. It is fit for every situation, whether it's sniping bombers or lanterns, singular zombies, or saving teammates. This weapon deserves to be in a tier of its own. Moving back to the infantry class, we have the one, the only heavy saber. Now, I've done a full video on this weapon, and I'm sure many of the people have done it as well, so I won't go over it a lot. But in short, this weapon hasn't got a downside. It has an insane penetration, a great amount of damage, insta-killing every enemy known to man with a simple poke to the head. This weapon deserves to be in a tier of its own. Only costing 500 franc, this weapon is worth every penny. As I said before, I won't go into too much detail because I've made a video on this, so I don't want to seem like I'm dragging this out. Nonetheless, this weapon is the go-to melee for infantry. Surprising many people, we have the Spontoon for the officer class. Being a new addition from the St. Petersburg update, this weapon is a god tier in every situation. Being able to swipe left and right and insta-killing zombies if aimed at the head. Why stop there? Costing 500 francs, you not only get 30 damage a hit with a 2.3 times headshot multiplier, you also get the hold fast ability, making any infantry or officer present with the bayonet, spontoon or lance insta-kill any zombie for 20 seconds. Although you can't move, granted, but trading movement for a plus damage reduction and a plus insta-kill and having it active for 20 seconds is pretty much worth it. Oh boy, do I love this. The spade. It's such a unique weapon coming as a utility at the same time. Purchasing for the sapper class for 600 francs, this insane beast of a weapon only has one downside, the damage. Only dealing 35 damage with a headshot multiplier at 1.4. This is more of a defensive shoving machine. Having the ability to entrench a barricade, making it sustainable to damage and survive surviving a bomber's explosion, barricade can withstand a lot of damage. However, when it comes to the spade, if said enemy is on said barricade, you can attack them from the downswing and stun them temporarily. However, if there are no barricade presence and you aim for the head, you can also stun them. And if that wasn't enough, if you time it correctly, you can even interrupt a zapper's swing. Granted, this takes a lot of practice and trial and error, so be careful. Safe to say this defensive weapon is just downright fun to use and definitely provides a different yet unique way to play. Now that we've finished the S tier, let's move down the list to the A tier. Weapons that are really good but just don't quite make it to the best of the best. And oh boy, do we start off with a great one, the air rifle. Now being the most expensive weapon in the game at 10,000 francs, this gun works in a unique way where you have an air canister to fire your ammunition. Now granted, your pellets are unlimited, but the more pellets you fire, the less air the next pellet has, meaning the more you use the weapon, the weaker it becomes. Therefore, it's better use it when situations need it most, such as the finale of Catacombs or the finale of Corp. And due to the low damage this gun outputs, it's better to only use it for lanterns and bombers because anything else is just too strong for this weak weapon. But hey, if you want more ammunition, you can simply purchase another air canister from Bubbles for 100 franc each. Overall, the weapon is good, but because it's situation dependent, that's why I'm classifying it as an A tier weapon. Moving on to the Siemens free-to-play weapon, the blunderbuss. There is literally no wrong thing about this weapon of mass destruction. Its high damage, high pellet count, and outstanding penetration means it's ideal for any situation. But why is it an amazing weapon? Well, it's all because of the reload. Now sure, there could be an argument of the reload cancelling, but the penalty of walk speed you get from reloading this weapon means it'd be more beneficial to camp at a section. Then, when times get desperate, equip this beast. I'm not saying it's a bad weapon, it is definitely a top tier weapon, but the little cons of the walk speed and reload speed just don't quite make the weapon an S tier. Overall, an outstanding weapon nonetheless. Next up on the list for the officer class, the brass pistol. This 35 damage a pellet with a short reload speed of 8.6 seconds can annihilate cores with ease. Having only a 1 penetration but combining that with the 245 damage output per shot and the hefty price tag of 750 francs, could this weapon possibly be any better? Actually, yes it could. The only reason why this isn't an S tier weapon is due to the knockback this weapon gives. If you're unaware of your surroundings, this can quickly become a game ender and send you straight back to the menu screen. Although the knockback is incredibly low, that doesn't mean it won't catch you off guard. Overall, the weapon is incredibly useful for every situation. However, just make sure there's only a few zombies and not hundreds of them. Moving on to the melee for mostly every class in the game, the saber. This weapon is honestly goated. In every aspect, this weapon will not let you down, having 4 directional locks depending on your choice of attack. This melee is the free-to-play champion. There isn't much of a reason why this melee isn't higher, to be honest. It's primarily because every other class has an alternative to this weapon. Infantry has the lance, the officer has the spontoon, the seaman has a hand axe. No, never mind, it's pretty good for the seaman. But my point being, there's alternatives for some classes, meaning it's good without a doubt, but there's alternatives. Also, it has the Revenant skin, which is just downright sick. Now, as previously mentioned, the infantry also has the pike. Having insane reach, penetration, damage, and a headshot multiplier, this meleeing machine is an overall blast to use. Sweeping up zombies with ease to meleeing bombers without instantly combusting, this is worth the 700 franc price tag. This weapon was originally going to be higher, but the primary reason why it's lower, it's a primary weapon, meaning equipping this, you lose your flintlock, whereas you could use your musket and alternate between a melee or a projectile, or you could use the carbine and switch to your heavy saber. If maybe sometime later down the line a pistol is available for the infantry to use, then alternate between the pike with the pistol, it would be higher. However, for the time being, it's amazing and I stand by that. It's just not higher because it's a primary weapon. Now going back to the sapper class, we have the free-to-play weapon of choice, the axe. The axe can do a side-to-side swing or even an overhead. Either way, you're killing majority of the zombies while simultaneously able to shove them back. The spade, as discussed, is for more defensive type of players. However, the axe is for more the offensive type of players, being able to shove, brace and attack. This melee isn't higher only because I feel the spade is slightly better. In most instances, the axe and the spade are situational and player based. Some would rather be offensive and some would rather be defensive. Now moving on to the B tier weapons. These are weapons that are good but can be heavily improved upon, where the crits, the reload or damage, spread or penetration, this is the tier for them. However, first up on this tier, the Knotgun. Hands down a fan favourite for people who love the blunderbuss. The Knotgun is basically a 7-barrel musket. Reloading all 7 barrels takes a very long time of 23 seconds, the longest in the game might I add, and sure you can reload cancel, but you're only shaving a few seconds off it. However, what makes this weapon unique? The fact that you can cancel any time between reloading 1 barrel to 7. Reloading all 7 barrels, you deal a staggering 1750 damage, as every barrel deals 250 damage, meaning it takes a while to reload, but the outcome is so worth it. Plus, with the price tag only being 300 franc, this weapon of pure dominance is not a foe to mess with. Now onto the long range beauty, the rifle. Now some people will argue, why is this so low? Touching my shirt. The rifle in some cases is absolutely goated. However, it is heavily situation dependent. If there's a horde in front of you, it's pointless. If you're trying to shoot the British in the ending scene of Copenhagen, it's essential. But that's not all. Combining this with the cuirassier class, and it might be the best option out there as you're limited to 10 pellets, you may want to think wisely about your flintlock choice. Or just use the air rifle, I don't care. However, for the staggering price tag of 500 franc, with a range of 1500 studs, 100% accuracy, 195 damage a shot, and a penetration of 15. This weapon of choice combined with the cuirassier is such a good combination. Did I mention it has a unique ability to ADS and have a 14-second reload time? By the way, that's why it's so low. For the officer class base weapon, the pistol is pretty good. However, why is it so low? Well, it's fast, it's agile, and is overall a solid weapon. But once you've won a few matches, you're gonna get bored of this weapon pretty fast and want to find an alternative. Hence why the brass pistol and the double barrel pistol are so high up. For a base weapon and for the newcomers to G&B, this weapon is what will make you interested in the officer class. Granted, it fires 1 pellet and its pretty efficient reload may not grasp everyone's attention, but combining it with the saber's charge ability, you may like it. This weapon is good situation wise and just messing around, a pretty solid base grade weapon. Costing 250 franc, available for both the infantry and the seamen, this weapon choice isn't for many people. For runners, it can barely hit them. For shamblers, it doesn't deal an awful lot of damage. However, the swing rate is pretty good. Now, this is better than the boarding axe primarily for 2 reasons. It can give a different type of strategy for the infantry class, and the weaker health zombies stand no chance to this. This weapon is only for a select few, and even then those select few may not agree with me on this. It's a good weapon, don't get me wrong, but some slight altercations need to be made for it to make it a better weapon to even stand a chance of being comparable to the saber. Honestly, one of, if not my favourite weapon in the whole game. However, it has some drawbacks. The first enemy that is hit with this weapon deals 100 damage off the bat, and with an 8 times headshot multiplier, 800 damage to a singular target sounds amazing. Also, it seems the pickaxe is primarily dependent on 1 target, and the surrounding targets will only deal a majority of the damage, not the full damage amount. Sure, it can brace and shove like the axe, but the axe has concurrent damage to 3 enemies, meaning it's dealing 85 damage to 3 enemies, as opposed to the pickaxe dealing 100 damage to the first enemy, 60 to the next, and 30 to the other. Personally, I feel that the pickaxe is just a worse variant of the axe, and it isn't worth a 300 price tag. It's good for what it does, but other melees can outweigh this weapon. Honestly, I have no idea where to begin with this weapon. It's weak, doesn't deal an awful lot of damage. However, it is the only option for the chaplain class, therefore making the class more susceptible to incoming damage. The stake also has a unique buff where any zombie hit via the stake will get a decrease in infection when attacking a player. Therefore, the more hits the chaplain does to a zombie, the higher the chance the player getting attacked by said zombie will be given infection. Quite confusing, but incredibly useful. The stats for the stake aren't exactly the greatest, but like I said, it's the only option available for the chaplain. The boarding axe is probably one of the more independent melees out of them all, having 2 sides giving the option to deal individual higher damage to 1 target at a time, or switching to deal with multiple enemies at a time. 9 times out of 10, this weapon will forget it even has a flip option, and the delay between switch to swing isn't even all that worth it. If you kept switching between the different swings due to the amount of enemies that are there, you'll be switching the sides of the axe before you even get a chance to kill an enemy. Honestly, this weapon has potential, don't get me wrong, but the biggest downside is the rotation of the axe. You'll forget the damage you can do from said weapon, as it has 2 different damages. Like I said, the weapon has potential, but it needs some serious changes. And finally, we have the best weapon in the game. Available for every class, unlocked via the Untouchable achievement, we have the delicious leg. Just why? Anyways, that's the full tier list of every weapon. Some people might be wondering why I haven't covered the grenades and tar bottles. I just want to say that I'm considering them a utility as opposed to a weapon, as you have limited supply. That is all from me. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll speak to you in the next one. Bye.